I wouldn't blame you if you thought that Ma Mayhem was a joke villain. She's a loud, overbearing mother with 2 useless sons, but I think there is more to her than that. She delivers a very clear message about legacy, because where Bruce Wayne builds a future and passes on his skills to the next generation, Ma Mayhem traps her children in the past and calls it love. Now, if you spent the last couple of seconds scratching your head trying to recall who I'm talking about, I don't blame you. Ma Mayhem is incredibly obscure. She is an original creation for Batman Beyond, although there are some similarities between her and other existing villains. For instance, there's a Teen Titans villain named Mother Mayhem, but Ma Mayhem is very different. She's an elderly Bonnie and Clyde type thief, except her Clyde has run off with another woman, leaving her with her 2 doofus adult sons, Slim and Carl. In terms of her look, she is dressed like someone from a bygone era. Bruce Timm has described her as looking like Marvel's Kingpin, just in a dress. At the same time, she draws from an obscure character from the 1960s Batman TV show, Ma Parker, and her gangster offspring. She's also rooted in the mythologized real-world figure of Ma Barker, the gangster matriarch of the 1930s. So there's actually quite a lot going on here just from her design. This immediately positions her as a relic, someone pulled from an older, pulpier idea of crime. The fact that she debuted in the episode The Eggbaby probably has something to do with why she's viewed as a bit of a joke though. This episode is definitely one of the lighter in the series, with some good moments of humour. The titular Eggbaby is a computerised infant simulator assigned in Terry McGinnis' family studies class, designed to mimic the needs and behaviour of a real baby. It cries, needs feeding and attention, and even tracks how well it's cared for, punishing neglect instantly, but rewarding consistent, engaged parenting. This is ripe for some silly drama because while there is no child endangerment, the audience still feels a connection to the robot because it makes realistic baby sounds. And if Terry messes this up, he will fail his class, and no one wants to see that. This is a perfect example of the pivot the show took in Series 2. I've talked about this many times before, but when Batman Beyond was commissioned, the executive in charge envisaged a teenage Batman struggling to juggle homework, hormones and heroism. What they actually got was a cyberpunk action show set in a nightmarish ultra-capitalist future with a radioactive CEO ruining Neo-Gotham. So when it was suggested that for the second season they should probably focus more on Terry's school life, this is the end result. And I know there are people that just find the concept silly, but I'd argue that the silliness is a smokescreen. This episode is about 2 different types of parents. You have Terry learning how to care for something fragile, contrasted with the more experienced Ma Mayhem failing at the exact same task with her own children. And that's the stuff that's on the surface. It gets more interesting when you bring in Bruce Wayne. One of the core themes of Batman Beyond was legacy. We saw this in several episodes with characters like Paxton Powers, the Royal Flush Gang, and even the Joker struggling to deal with living up to their predecessors. And it was a struggle that was shared by Terry, the new Batman. The series constantly asked what you should pass on to the next generation and what was worth holding on to. Ma Mayhem is another legacy-centric character. Her legacy should be her 2 sons. But she doesn't prepare them for the future, she just treats them as useful tools in her arsenal. While Slim is a skilled safecracker and Carl is incredibly strong, to her they're still incompetent babies. They're not given the opportunity to learn, grow and be their own men though. Instead, Ma Mayhem scolds them and hits them whenever they do things that she doesn't like. Despite being adults, she controls and infantilizes them, and they are dependent on their mother. I don't know about the rest of you, but I don't think they would cope being on their own for very long. And the question I ask is whether that's just their nature, or if that's how they were raised. Given how Ma Mayhem seems to mistake authority for parenting, I suspect it's the latter. And there's one shot that really demonstrates this familial relationship, when Batman captures Carl. Carl calls out to his mother for help and she socks Batman in the mouth and then walks directly over Carl to get to Batman. What a perfect visual summary of that family. Ultimately, what this demonstrates is that her legacy is stagnation, and this is a direct contrast to Terry. Due to events outside of his control, he felt forced into the role of Batman, and he wasn't perfect, but the key difference is that he was allowed to fail and to adapt. Yes, he had Bruce Wayne in his ear at all times, offering advice, but he was allowed to fail and that led to growth. Ma Mayhem's parenting style is to scold her sons for making mistakes and then to step in and do the task herself. There's no opportunity for them to grow. One approach traps children in permanent dependency, the other prepares them to stand on their own. And this is all reinforced at the end of the episode when Terry gets his grade. He ends up receiving the top grade in the class, something that feels almost absurd given how chaotic his experience was. While the other students managed feeding their egg babies on time and keeping them from breaking, Terry stood out for a different reason entirely. As the teacher points out, his egg baby had been stimulated, kept active, and crucially had fun. And that's the brilliance of his approach. Terry is exhausted, overwhelmed, and constantly improvising, but he's also present and engaged. He adapts, responds, and takes responsibility even when it's inconvenient. Where others treat the assignment like a checklist, Terry treats it like a relationship. It's messy, unpredictable, and far from controlled, and that's exactly why it works. His parenting style is about showing up, learning in real time, and putting the needs of someone else ahead of himself. Now let's contrast that with Ma Mayhem. The only legacy that she's concerned with is stealing some rubies that she and her ex-husband had stolen on their first heist together. They're not the most valuable items, but nostalgia is what she's chasing. In fact, when Slim suggests that they steal more valuable items, the idea insults her. Nothing is more valuable than what these rubies mean to her. They are a preserved, perfect moment back when everything was going to plan before they had any children, and by having them in her possession, she feels as though she's that person again. She refuses to sell them because that would mean letting go of the past. Instead, she hoards them to maintain a lie. She talks about her ex-husband as if he were dead, and when one of her sons reminds her that he ran out on them, she responds angrily. She prefers to keep living the fantasy. Now, as I mentioned earlier, where things get really interesting is when we make a comparison between Ma Mayhem and Bruce Wayne. They're both defined by loss and fixated on their past. But where Ma Mayhem holds on to hers as tight as she can, Bruce has accepted that he needs to pass his skills on to the next generation. He knows that he can no longer be Batman, need we say any more than his traumatic final night? And eventually he comes around to the idea of training Terry and building a future beyond himself. And really, that's what we should all be doing. We should be trying to make the world a better place than it was since we arrived, and then trusting the next generation to do the same. Ma Mayhem does pretty much the opposite. And if the way she treats her sons didn't make it clear enough, just look at how she treats the egg baby after it ends up in her gang's clutches. The egg baby cries and screams when Carl and Slim hold it. Ma Mayhem steps in saying that she can handle it and notes how it reminds her of when her boys were little. And within a second her emotions change as she orders Carl to get rid of it. While she's been very concerned with holding on to her past, the joys of motherhood are something she doesn't want to revisit. This further demonstrates her lack of maternal instincts, or at least a rejection of them. But still, after Batman catches the baby and chases the crooks, he ends up slicing the straps on her purse, causing the rubies to fall over the rooftop's edge. Ma Mayhem dives after them with no thought into how she might survive. All that matters to her is holding on to that period of time where she was happy. Batman ropes her up, and while she was initially ecstatic to have caught her jewels, they fall from her grasp to the streets below as she shrieks in horror. That was Ma Mayhem's only on-screen appearance, but she did make a brief appearance in the Batman Beyond tie-in comics in a story written by Eggbaby's co-writer Hilary Bader. When a foreign princess comes to Gotham and wanders off, Carl, Slim, and Ma Mayhem tried to kidnap her and hold her to ransom. However, Batman intervenes. The story really wasn't all that much about the Mayhem family. It was more about the princess learning that her idealized view of her own country and how its people live was completely wrong. I considered not mentioning the comic, not just because people are quick to dismiss them, even when they're written by the people that wrote on the show, but because Ma Mayhem's role was so small. However, I know for a fact that if I didn't mention it, then I'd get people telling me that I forgot all about it, so there you go, consider it covered. Ultimately, I think that the most interesting thing about Ma Mayhem is how she seems to resent motherhood. And this is particularly ironic given that motherhood is so central to her identity. Likewise, Batman Beyond was a show about the future, but Ma Mayhem is a character who refused to let go of her past. And that's why she fails, because she cannot move forward. Ma Mayhem may call it love, holding on and keeping on to things exactly as they were, but love isn't about preservation. It's about change, growth, and letting something become more than it was. That's the lesson that Terry learns, the one Bruce had to accept, and the one Ma Mayhem refuses to understand. And so while the future moves on without her, she's left clinging to fragments of a life that no longer exists and watches them slip through her fingers. Okay, that's it for this essay. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, tell all your friends about me. You know how YouTube works. If you really liked the video and feel like tossing a buck or two my way, please consider using the thanks button, because every little helps. And if you have really enjoyed my work, you might want to pick up a copy of my book, Rogues Gallery. It features 22 essays on villains from Batman the Animated Series. There's a beautiful cover by Batman the Animated Series background artist John Calmette, a foreword by director Dan Reber, and a moving segment from the late Kevin Conroy sharing his thoughts on life, love, and loss. Plus, an exclusive essay on the Condiment King that will never be made into a video. Rogues Gallery is available worldwide on Amazon, both digitally and in softcover. Finally, channel memberships are just $1.99 a month and give you early access to my essays, custom emojis, and your name featured on my members end screen, which has been rolling for a little while now. Huge thanks to everyone who's already part of this. You've helped to make these videos possible. If you want to see your name up here too, join the channel now. And while I have your attention, please consider checking out my other channel, Serum Lake Comics, where I talk about mostly DC comic books. Next time. When I return on Monday, I want to use an episode of the new Batman Adventures to discuss how our fears fester and build up in our minds, but rarely happen. Yeah, we're going to be talking about Over the Edge. And next Friday, it'll be time to discuss the overwhelming winner of my recent Justice League villain poll, the young girl who was responsible for one of the best Batman moments in all media, Ace of the Royal Flush Gang. Hope to see you then.